should have listened. Every kid in town knew the rule. Stay away from the abandoned hospital by the bayou. The warnings weren't just small-town ghost stories. The older kids whispered about shadows moving in the windows at night, about screams that echoed through the empty halls. People claimed they'd seen a doctor still walking the halls long after the place had been abandoned. We all thought they were just stories until the night we found out they were real. It was one of those humid Louisiana nights, the kind where the air sticks to your skin and the cicadas won't shut up. My friends and I were at Jake's house, bored out of our minds. It was supposed to be our last summer together before college, and we wanted to do something memorable, something exciting. That's when the hospital came up. For years we had dared each other to go, but none of us had ever actually done it. Something always held us back. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was fear. But that night something felt different. Maybe it was the heat, or maybe it was the way the moon hung too low in the sky. But we decided that if we were ever going to do it, it had to be now. So we packed our bags, flashlights, extra batteries, a couple of old walkie-talkies, and even some snacks in case we got stuck there longer than planned. We told ourselves it was just a place, just an old building. But the second we set foot on the trail leading to the hospital, I felt it. A shift in the air, like the world was holding its breath. The path was overgrown, twisted with gnarled roots and creeping vines. The deeper we went, the quieter everything became. The sound of the bayou faded. The bugs stopped chirping. Even the wind refused to move. Then we saw it. The hospital loomed ahead of us, its windows like black, empty eyes staring down at us. The red warning signs had faded long ago, but you could still make out the words, "Do not enter." The fence was rusted, but someone, maybe other idiots like us, had already cut a hole. Jake went first, and then the rest of us followed. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic. "Smells like old blood," Jake muttered. I elbowed him. "Shut up." We stepped deeper inside. The floorboards creaked beneath us. Paint peeled from the walls, curling like dead skin. Then the sound started. Tap, tap, tap. A soft, rhythmic tapping from somewhere above us. We froze. "What the hell was that?" Mason whispered. Nobody answered. Our flashlights barely cut through the dark as we crept up the stairs, the tapping growing louder. Tap, tap, tap. It led us down a long hallway, past doors that hung open like gaping mouths. The closer we got, the heavier the air became, like something was pressing down on us. Finally, we reached the last door. It was slightly ajar. Jake pushed it open. Inside was an old operating room. Rusted surgical tools lay scattered across the counters. The metal table in the center was still bolted to the floor, and above it, a rusted scalpel hung from a thread, swinging back and forth, tapping against the table. Tap, tap, tap. That's when we saw him. A figure stood in the corner, a doctor, or at least something that looked like one. His lab coat was stained, his face hidden beneath a surgical mask. His eyes, hollow, sunken pits, locked onto us. He moved, too fast. The scalpel in his hand flashed in the dim light. We ran. We flew down the hallway, not daring to look back. The air behind us rushed with movement like something was chasing us, reaching for us. By the time we burst out of the hospital doors, our lungs burned, our legs shook. We didn't stop running until we reached Jake's house. We swore we'd never go back. But the horror followed us home. That night, we sat in Jake's living room, trying to convince ourselves it had been a trick of the light, our imaginations playing games. Then, the temperature dropped. The lights flickered. the room filled with an unnatural silence. And then, a shadow moved in the corner. The doctor stood in Jake's doorway. His eyes burned with an unholy glow. He stepped forward, his scalpel gleaming. My chest tightened. My muscles refused to move. The moment he reached for us, the light snapped back on, and he was gone. Jake swore, clutching his chest. We all saw him. We all felt him. And then, the nightmares started. At first they were just dreams. We'd see his face in the dark, head as the tapping echoed in our minds. Then, the bruises started appearing. Long, thin cuts we couldn't explain. Jake got it the worst. He stopped answering texts and stopped coming to school. One night I got a message from him. I have to go back. I have to stop this. I tried calling, no answer. So we went after him, back to the hospital. This time, we weren't alone. As soon as we stepped inside, the doors slammed shut behind us. Then, footsteps, coming from above. We ran up the stairs calling for Jake. When we reached the old operating room, the table was no longer empty. Jake lay there, strapped down, and above him, the doctor. He turned, his hollow eyes piercing through us. "You shouldn't have come back," he whispered. The scalpel sank into Jake's chest. We lunged forward, but the room twisted. The walls melted, and the ceiling stretched into darkness. Jake screamed. Then, everything snapped to black. I woke up outside, alone. The hospital was silent behind me. Jake was gone. I ran home, praying it was a dream. I stopped going outside. Every night I heard the tapping. At first I thought it was coming from the walls of my room, a quiet, rhythmic sound. Tap, 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 like metal against glass. Then, one night, I followed the sound. It wasn't coming from inside my room. It was coming from the window. I turned my head, and he was there. Jake, or what used to be Jake. He stood outside in the darkness, barely visible under the dim streetlight. His head was tilted slightly like he was studying me. His white lab coat fluttered slightly in the wind. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Then, he moved. He raised his hand slowly and tapped the window. Tap, tap, tap. I scrambled backward, my breath coming in gasps. "Jake," I whispered. "Please, if you can hear me, fight it. Don't let him take you." Jake's lips curled into a slow, unnatural smile. "Too late," he whispered. Then, the window shattered. I don't remember running. I don't remember grabbing my car keys or getting behind the wheel. The next thing I knew, I was driving. Fast. Where? I didn't know. I just had to get away. The hospital. That was the only thought in my head. I had to end this. I drove like a madman, the road blurring in the darkness. My fingers were clenched so tight around the steering wheel that my knuckles turned white. And then, suddenly, the car stalled. The radio crackled. Static. Then, a voice. "You shouldn't have left." The temperature in the car dropped instantly. My breath came out in foggy clouds. The windows started to fog over. And then, in the rearview mirror, I saw him, Jake, sitting in the back seat, smiling, holding a scalpel. My scream barely made it out before the car lurched forward on its own, tires screeching against the pavement. The speedometer needle shot up. 40, 50, 60. The wheel ripped from my hands as the car turned sharply toward the hospital. I pulled at the door handle. Locked. The speed increased. 70, 80, 90. I could hear Jake breathing behind me, could feel the cold presence in the car. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "You can't escape him." The last thing I remember is the car crashing straight into the hospital gates. I woke up inside the hospital. My head throbbed. My body ached. Blood trickled down my forehead. I tried to move, but my hands were strapped down. I was lying on an operating table. I wasn't alone. Jake stood beside me, scalpel in hand, and next to him, the doctor. The room was spinning, my vision blurring in and out. I had to be dreaming. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Then the doctor stepped forward. I tried to scream, but my voice barely came out. He leaned down, his hollow eyes peering into mine. "You're part of my hospital now," he whispered. Then he raised his scalpel. I thrashed, trying to break free from the straps. The cold metal dug into my wrists. It wasn't a dream. This was real. Jake watched with a blank expression. The same boy who had been my best friend. I turned to him, desperate. "Jake, you don't have to do this. You can fight him." Jake's lips twitched. Just for a second, I saw something. A flicker, like a man trapped inside his own body. His grip on the scalpel tightened. Then he lunged forward, not at me, at the doctor. The scalpel sliced through the air. The doctor hissed, his body jerking unnaturally. He wasn't human, not anymore. He wasn't bleeding, he was unraveling. Darkness spilled from his body like thick, inky smoke. The hospital walls shook violently as the shadows stretched, the very air vibrating around us. Jake turned to me, his expression filled with something I hadn't seen in him for weeks. Humanity. "Run!" he yelled. The straps on my wrists and ankles snapped open on their own. I rolled off the table, nearly collapsing on the cold floor. Jake stood between me and the doctor, his breathing ragged. "You have to go," he said, eyes locked onto the monstrous figure, now distorting, changing. "But go!" I ran. The hospital was collapsing. I sprinted down the hallways, the walls closing in, the shadows twisting into unnatural shapes. The door was just ahead, a glimmer of moonlight spilling through. I burst outside, and behind me, the hospital exploded into darkness. Not fire, not debris, just nothing, like it had never been there at all. I never saw Jake again. Not really, not the real Jake. The town never spoke about the hospital again, like it had been wiped from their memories. But I remember. Every night, I remember. Because when I close my eyes, I still hear the tapping, and I know he's still out there, waiting for someone else to be foolish enough to step inside. And next time, he might not let them leave.